Okay, guys, we are going to start the show. Here we go. All right. Welcome, everybody. It is now December 8th, Friday. We just had our first broadcast last Friday. We were talking about the FIBI, For Investors by Investors event that we had down in Long Beach yesterday. It had a really good turnout. There have been some fires out in my area in Los Angeles and also Ventura County, so we were a little bit concerned about what the turnout would be. You know, that traffic was always kind of an issue anyway, but we were very pleased at the people that came out, a couple hundred people. And we had some really, I think, some really wonderful success stories of people that have been involved with and are still involved with FIBI. A gentleman that I spoke to, he said, "Hey, you know, Ellis, I just closed on my mobile home parks, and when I met this gentleman, it was 2007 or 8, I believe, and he was a little bit smarting from the last downturn. He, he kind of had to lick his wounds and had to rebuild again. And so what he did was he went back to the drawing board and started buying some mobile home parks. He bought some out of state, out of, I believe it was in Kansas, and he and his partner really put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and turned some mobile home parks around. And he said, "Hey, you know, between you and me, Ellis, we just closed $3 million, and I can't believe it because this is just kind of like a lifetime change that I can't believe it's happening through all the hard work." And I was just really amazed at how much he attributed that to kind of being around like-minded individuals and being very motivated and engaged with the process of investing. And one of the reasons I'm bringing on our guest today, who is a good friend of mine and also a mentor, his name is Rick Harmon, and he's known in the investment community and also in the legal community as a probate expert. I'm going to bring in Rick in a moment, but one thing that Rick is really good at is he's really good at surrounding himself with very innovative and intelligent people. He introduced me to a more powerful way of masterminding, and I think that's one of the subjects that I want to touch upon with him. Rick, can you hear me okay? I'm going to pull you off of mute. Let's see if we can get you. I see you, but I can't hear you, and oh, that's a bummer. See if I can. We may have to redo the because I don't see your mic isn't on. Can you hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. And he's got a beautiful couch there. He must be in his house up in Chino Hills area.
Oh,
gotcha. Hey, Rick,
hey.
Can you hear me okay now?
Oh, yeah. Excellent.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us and our audience today, Rick. I know that it's been a good year for you. You've had quite a bit of accomplishments this year. I know that so you just closed on a property that you've been selling. You sold a ranch, and you also have something you're working on the beach. You want to share with us a little bit about the project you're working on out there in the beach area?
Well, by the way, I really thought this was going to be an audience of just you and me. So I'll be careful not to scratch anything that I shouldn't be scratching.
Yeah, I know that you're very protective and close to the vest, but what you can share, please.
So it's been a good year, and I've had a pretty good run. So um, I've been focusing on simplifying. I've
Okay.
been focusing on uh, turning my hard assets into well-secured liquidated capital,
Okay.
well collateralized,
Okay.
and trying to resolve some of my. I have a lot of problem type properties, problem title issues, and all that, which is really my background.
Mm-hmm.
And those of you who may know me as Rick the Probate Guy um, may not know the dirty little secret, and that is actually I'm a title guy masquerading as a probate expert, even though probate is definitely within that sphere. So anyway, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Hope you
Yeah.
can see me okay here. So much for the studio lighting.
Yeah, well, we will deal with it. I'm just happy that we have an investor of your experience and stature that was able to join us today. We have actually Rick Solis, who you and I both know, has joined us today, and also
Great.
Matthew Owen, another partner of FIBI, is watching. So I just want to give a shout out to them. But Rick, what I thought I would talk about is the idea of masterminding. It's funny because at the end of the year, I don't know if this happens to you, but I always kind of automatically kind of do a tape in my head about what I did the previous year in 2017, what I could have done better, et cetera, and what I want to do for 2018. It's just kind of a natural cycle of events that happen. So I'm looking at how I can improve 2018, and I know. Considering all your experience, and I consider you, one of the most successful investors that I know, you still are probably one of the most active people in masterminds that I have ever met. Tell me a little bit about kind of the process that you've gone through to embrace masterminds as much as you have.
Okay, well, first of all, I believe strongly in the philosophy if you're green, you grow, you're ripe, you rot. And so, as you know, I've had a big commitment to education, mine and certainly others. And so I find it to be the best ROI, the best return on my investment
Uh-huh.
is the money in time that I spend on my own education to do the things that I want to do. And the reason why I do it is because of the speed of implementation
Mm.
and the speed of gaining the knowledge. Because one way or the other, you're going to get an education. There's no
Right.
question about that.
Right.
Usually, the most people who have difficulty getting started or people who are getting momentum, and for all of you out there who are somewhat stuck, I'll offer you a few ideas here. So, what I discovered, and by the way, 2018 is going to be my 40th year in real estate, and
Oh, no
in
kidding.
Ellis, because we're pretty close personal friends, um, Ellis watched me go through a bunch of health issues in 2009, where I lost a lot of cognitive, what brain cells I didn't have damaged already I lost more of. And so the masterminds have been a great way for me to go back and kind of reset the clock. So I'm gonna start from this basis.
Okay.
For somebody who is having difficulty going forward from where they are, the issue is usually related to the previous step. So what people have to do in the very beginning is they need to make a commitment. That's number one. You got to make a commitment. Okay. The second thing that you're going to do is you're going to have to find some way to get the courage. That's the second C. Okay. And then along the way, you're going to find it necessary to have capability. And then the fourth thing that's going to get you here, I've got like five fingers up. The fourth thing that's going to get you then is confidence. But if you don't have confidence, it's because of something that you didn't do before. So if you think if you're sitting on the side of the runway, you say, "Hey, I want the big test," you are not going to go out and fly airplanes or jets,
Yeah.
let alone anything, without doing some basic work. And that basic work means understanding the foundations. If you do understand the foundations, then it's a matter of finding a way to get the courage to do your first deal. I
Hmm.
talk to people who have difficulty just getting started because they won't really make that effort because their tolerance of risk is so low, or their
Right.
expectation is that they want to see an immediate result.
Right. Right. And just to kind of restate what you said. Number one, you said making a commitment. Number two, courage. Three, capability. Four, confidence. And you phrased a lot of these things in terms of being a pilot, because I know that you used to fly quite a bit back in the day. And I remember one phrase you used to mention is that you meet a lot of people, they want to fly the jumbo jet without going to flight school. And that really resonates with me because, if anything, being around you really reminds me of the importance of doing the work to build the foundation, to really
Mm-hmm.
make yourself knowledgeable, and I think having the knowledge is the bridge to going forward with the courage, but really putting in the work to get the knowledge, so that you could implement intelligently.
Well, yeah. So here's what I wanted to do. In the very beginning, I had made a commitment that I wanted. I'll use the example of flying. If you use that, before I was really buying properties, even though I started in '78, I didn't really start getting any kind of momentum until the early '80s. So along the way, I also wanted to fly airplanes,
Right.
and so I had this. The story is I think it's instructive, no pun intended. So I wanted to do it on the cheap, and so I went to the little Corona airport,
Mm.
uncontrolled, and there was a Japanese flying club there,
Ah.
and so they had instructors, and they were pretty affordable. And I didn't speak Japanese, at least not in those days. And so what I did was I said, "Hey, I want to take flying lessons," and they took me to ground school. And then they connected me with a flight instructor.
Hmm.
Well, the flight instructor I had, um, who was an old World War II fighter pilot who flew for the other side, but he's not Japanese. Luftwaffe.
Oh my
His name
gosh.
was Andre.
Yeah.
And Andre was a great initial instructor. And the importance of this, as I say, is that he drilled things in, including some bad habits, I'm afraid to say, at flying. But to this very day, I hear his voice in things that are even outside the flying area. So it comes down to having to focus on the basics. And the basics are, and I still hear his voice in his thick German accent, aviate, navigate, and communicate. He was Austrian too, like the former governor.
Uh-huh.
And because of that, that understanding of the priorities of things, I've had a higher level of confidence and a higher level of risk tolerance, perhaps, than other people, which is why I'm very comfortable dealing with attorneys and all these ugly, messy,
Right.
problematic type of files. So, getting back to masterminds, what I've discovered is masterminds and other types of, effective training is some of the best ways of being around people who are experienced, who are actually, in the trenches, doing the deal, and not just talking about it. To go to a real estate club, I hate to say this, but, well over 80% of the people are not active in real estate.
Right.
Um,
It's
it,
frustrating.
it, it, it,
Yeah.
pardon me?
It can be very frustrating because you see the same people over and over again. They've yet to take the step to get a deal done.
Well, it becomes entertainment. And
Hmm.
having been silent partner in one of the large real estate investment clubs many years ago for a long time, I got a chance to see it, and I found it kind of frustrating. So, applying this to masterminds is what I realized is that for me, the environment what I want to be in, is I want to be around people who are doing it, not
Right.
people who are just talking about it. And so that's how you and I met through Ward Hannigan.
That's right. That's right. You've had your experience participating in masterminds and also actually being kind of the linchpin of a mastermind that you were kind enough to invite me to, that we meet twice a year. Um, with your observations and your experience in both parts of being in a mastermind, both organizing and also participating, what do you think the essential ingredients are of a successful mastermind meeting or a mastermind group?
Well, I think number one is the group needs to be a manageable size.
Okay.
And I have been to groups that are large that work, but it's not as personal and not as so the communication and working together needs to be close. The very first mastermind group I got involved was almost 200 people. I don't really know that that's actually a mastermind group, but I went to my first event, which is a J. Abraham event, about 1995.
Okay.
And that's when my whole world kind of changed around because I thought I knew something about marketing. And I learned about the wild, wacky world of direct response marketing.
Didn't you used to teach marketing, Rick? You used to teach marketing. Didn't you teach marketing at one point in your life?
Hard to believe. I have a degree in international marketing, graduate program at a well-known, one of the largest, business schools in the country. And then I realized after taking this 3-day mastermind class, which was an unheard of $5,000 for a 3-day weekend at the time, turned me upside down and realized that I didn't know squat.
Right.
So what I learned from there is about a whole lot of business principles that I never really did understand. So I learned about some of the basic principles. And by the way, this is not leading up to a pitch. I don't have anything to sell anybody.
Right.
So don't anybody get tense or worried that there is going to be a call to action or some kind of a freebie or
there's no link to a credit card, nothing like that. No link.
Yeah. You can leave your credit cards, wherever they are. So, okay. So I'll tell you with the masterminds that I do now. I have a budget that's just under $100,000 a year on my masterminds.
Right.
And I don't say that bragging. I'm just saying, so someone who's thinking about, I don't want to spend $25 in this book. What if I don't learn about it? What I need to learn, right away.
Yeah.
Okay, but I find I get a very good ROI. So currently, right now, I'm involved in Genius Network, which is Joe Polish. There's a 25K group. That means $25,000 a year. We meet 3 times.
Okay.
I belong to Strategic Coach, which is Dan Sullivan's group, but not Dan personally. Okay. The group that you and I have participated in, you've been part of my group for some years. And of course, my group is all high-end experienced, seasoned real estate investors, high net worth people. And and for many years, I ran a group that we met out at my ranch that I recently sold out in San Diego. Yeah. With the conference center. And I belong to a smattering of other groups. I just came back from a group in Orlando the night before last, and we're there for a couple of days. And, what I love about it is because in spite of the fact that, hey, I'm 62 years old, there is a lot to learn. And I can learn from plenty of other people who are much younger and have other things. And it's not all about high tech. You can only do so much with tech.
Right. One thing I notice, Rick, and what I've tried to embrace is that you and I have been to some maybe quasi masterminds that haven't been so great. One that comes to mind is one that was out in Florida many years ago. But you have this willingness to say, you know what, I'm going to do it because that has possibly led you to a better one or to connect with the right person to find the next one. So there's this willingness for education and willingness to take risks and experience. And I find that it's very enlightening to know that, especially someone that has reached your level of competence and success in this industry, that you're still saying, you know what, I'm willing to take the chance to push myself and invite the possibility of learning something more of honing your craft. So I find that really fascinating. Guy Spalding has actually joined us in the audience, and he posted a question. It said, Elon Musk has published 8 books that has changed his life. What are Rick's must-read books, both real estate in general, Are there any books out there that you think are essential reading? At least it has been essential reading for you.
Well, I'll go back to some of the early books, and then I'll talk about current books that I've recently read or in the middle of. One of the earliest books I read was about real estate investing,
Hmm.
and the Nickerson book, which I think is out of print.
Right.
But the concept of leverage and buying a property and then buying another and splitting it and doubling down and all that.
That's William
Um,
Nickerson. How I went from, gosh, I forget the title. I should know when I have it, but it's
yeah,
William
I think
Nickerson.
I'm old enough that it was like how to go from $10 to $20 when you can still buy a house for $10.
Right.
Um, the um, earlier books that I found after that had to do, were specific. So I went through a frustrating point in the early 90s where I was having difficulty getting books, getting deals either closed or had other people who were taking, basically cutting into my profits or deals that weren't coming together. Or they were
Uh-huh.
problematic.
Right.
And so a friend of mine, one of my closest friends, suggested a book by Robert J. Ringer, Winning Through Intimidation,
Mm.
which is not a book on how to abuse or intimidate other people.
Right.
It's how to not be intimidated.
Mm.
Great book.
Okay. Ringer.
Found other books along the way. Current crop of books that I've finished recently is Never Split the Difference.
Hmm.
I'm currently, right in the middle of the the book by Sam Zell and Am I Being Too Subtle?
Right. That's
And
good.
a great book.
Yeah.
Zeckendorf, great book. Um, as you know, I have a pretty large library. I like the marketing legend Dan Kennedy's comment about the difference between people and their economies and all that. If you go to some people's places, they say that poor people have big TVs
Hmm.
and rich people have big libraries. So, and I'm not going to be arrogant when I say that, but the value I think is in the is in the information and actually applying and implementing it.
Right.
Which I will be the first one to admit that I've had occasionally difficulty or frustration in implementation, which is another reason why I go to boot camps and mastermind groups so I can learn how to implement what I've learned.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think earlier when we were speaking on the broadcast, you mentioned something about speed of implementation, and I find that a very apt concept because I see, especially with and we've talked a lot about this, especially with the advent of the internet, there's this notion of, free, everything is free out there. You can go get it for free. And what will happen many times is I found that there's a lot of people stumbling around and taking a lot of time to implement because they're so focused on uh, getting it for free rather than focusing on the profit. Because if you can implement faster, you can be profitable faster. And there's a time to be frugal, and there's also a time to really, like you said, make a commitment and to use your dollars and your investments wisely. So, was that something that always that you embraced as far as kind of being committed to speed of implementation, or was it a process for you?
Um, Something of a process, to be candid. In the early days, I did not know what I was doing at all. Not that I always know what I'm doing now, but I'm much more organized and much more laser focused. And I think I know more ways of how to pull profits out of deals than anybody I know within my community. And I work, within some, pretty high-end folks. But specifically, what I found was that in the early days, I didn't have any kind of a rhyme or reason. In essence, I didn't have a strategy.
Uh-huh.
And so when I started foreclosures in 1978, 1978, um, and what I really was an equity hunter, but I didn't know it. But I bought these properties that didn't cash flow.
Uh-huh.
Financing sucked. The era of, and this is not a political remark, but the era of the Jimmy Carter inflation days and high interest rates and all that were
Right.
very difficult to overcome. But at the same time, we got pretty creative.
Mm-hmm.
But I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't understand title. I also titled um, real estate title to be a problem, and I loathed anything to do with title. And it wasn't until about early 1990s, 91 or something like that, when I bought my third residence. And the short version of the story was that because of some title issues and paying an expert, in this case, an old attorney who really knew his stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to leverage that knowledge and made myself an extra $500,000, which in 1990 or so was worth some money. Not that it isn't now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
And
sure.
so my attitude about that problem was that, now that became an opportunity.
Right.
So what I found was that the speed of implementation wasn't as important until I really understood the nature of the problem and then knew how to leverage the problem. I had something this morning that was a problem on a project
Mm-hmm.
that, and we discovered that what I complained to be a problem ended up being actually a solution, and actually ended up being much better than I would have ever thought. But that's so the ability to embrace a problem as being an opportunity. So my business has been based upon spotting problems early, anticipating them, and seeing problems that I happen to personally like working and and resolving.
Right.
And that's been extremely lucrative to me because that's what I translated into working within the legal community.
Right. I find it ironic that you had such an aversion to title, and now you've kind of become like,
Now I are one, yeah.
yeah, yeah. You kind of embody what I would think is understanding title at such a deep level, and being to, like you said, extract profit because of title issues. I think that's fascinating. We have Sean Gorham out there, a good friend of mine, and some of his questions out there. He's talking about what are you doing in today's competitive tight market? Where do you see the market going? I know that I don't want to completely speak for you, Rick, but I don't think that you're that concerned about it because the type of deals you do aren't as dependent upon market. I think we talked about this as the adjustments you make is just to make sure that you're maintaining the proper risk profile if markets go down and when. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, my current position has been over the last 12 months or so, and again, not a political remark, but I guess an economic forecast, is that basically I've been preparing to clean up my portfolio of real estate, which has served its purpose. And so rentals that I just didn't see that had a whole lot of upside, or they're in kind of like some of the iffy areas as opposed to where I could put them in. I've been preparing as if the market is going to change in the next 12 to 18 months. And I may be totally wrong.
Right.
And yeah, Bruce Norris is a friend. But I he's not writing checks to protect my money. So we all have to make our own decision.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I'm in litigation right now with something where I had trusted someone with my money to do something.
Right.
And it ultimately, it's like, how many times do I have to learn this lesson over and over? Is that nobody looks after your money like you do. So my approach has been to reposition myself in the marketplace as to, from an investment standpoint, not from a marketing, as to the services I do within the legal community, but provide more liquidity and to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that I think are around the corner. I'm not expecting everything's going to on a Tuesday, although there's always a possibility of the unknowns that are not known.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So my position is I want to be in a position where I have enough liquidity to take advantage of those opportunities. I'm a very good spotter of opportunity, at least I believe. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would have to say you're one of the best for sure. And we talk about that once a year at our mastermind, where we devote it completely to opportunities. And I'm always boggled with all the, it's mind-boggling with all the bright minds in the room of all the different opportunities that we come up. There's never a shortage of opportunity, that's for sure, no matter where the market is. It's funny we mentioned Bruce Norris. Sean Gorham also wanted to talk about Bruce Norris. And if you don't know who Bruce Norris is, he is a quite respected investor and a prognosticator out here in Southern California. He really studies the markets very closely, and he has a huge following of investors that are following what he says about where we are in the cycle. And Sean mentioned that Norris has been moving money to Florida, yet he still thinks there's upside in California. My thoughts on that is, yeah, there may be an upside to it, but we are, California is typically in a boom and bust type of environment. I don't think a bust is coming around the corner, but I think you should just know that there's a lot of stuff out there that's not going to pencil out, and we're riding kind of the ether of appreciation. So that's when I know that things get a little dicey, because those are the ones that can kind of clean your clock out if you don't take the proper steps to be much more disciplined. And Sean is asking, so are you selling, paying the taxes to gain liquidity? I think that's part of it. I think using as many tax advantages out there as you can by exchanging properly, et cetera, using tax advantage accounts, everything that you can utilize to minimize the tax liability and maximize your liquidity without having to give up too much of it to taxes. We are at a little bit over time here, but I just wanted to see if you had any final words, Rick. I want to thank you so much for spending just a few minutes here this afternoon to kind of chat with our audience. I super appreciate it, as always.
That's my pleasure.
Any last words or thoughts before we close this out?
Yeah, I'd say this is that if you are really committed to increasing your knowledge of real estate and all that, not be in a big hurry to write a check for the educational opportunities, but spend time talking to the people who are actually doing it and watching what they do, watching where they go. It used to be that we would go to like Jack Miller events,
Right.
and I was a big fan, and I consider myself a friend of Jack Miller. But now it's kind of a new group of people. I do like the old school approach of understanding debt, private money financing. I think there's a lot of opportunities there. So if anybody who is not doesn't understand the collateral, you do need to understand the collateral first, the asset class, and then understand the debt side. If you are in either the mode of doing financing, seller financing, or if you're going to buy paper, or if you're a guy who also does things like fractional interest or buys properties, these probate estates, and all what I call pizza by the slice, you definitely need to understand the equity side. And then the other closing point that I'll make is that if you really think that you're going to learn the business and get up to speed by, I won't use any names, but let's just say if your belief is that you're going to learn the business and become an expert by only participate by your expenditures is just your time watching online discussion forums like Empty Pockets or whatever they're called and all that. I wish you luck, but I really don't want you in my world because you're kind of not realistic. I really want to be around people who have a little higher tolerance for risk and not afraid to spend a dollar in their education, recognize they're not going to see that dollar come back next week necessarily. Right. But what they might see is $100 come back in 6 months or a year or longer.
Right. I think those are great words of wisdom to end our broadcast on, is that really looking for to differentiate yourself in what we see as maybe a weakness in the current environment is that everybody's thinking that, hey, I can get everything for free, and I'm not willing to work really hard to have a deeper commitment in learning this craft of investing that we're involved in. And there's a much deeper level of not just committing yourself the time, but really embracing that, hey, this is an investment in yourself. So with those final words, I want to thank everyone for joining us out there. Please come back and see us on Fridays, 4 to 4:30 on Pacific time here on Facebook Live. We're going to bring in other guests as well and other investors from time to time that are going to talk shop. But I'm going to close it out. But hey, everybody, have a wonderful weekend and stay safe out there.
Thanks, guys.
Be right. See you guys.